Hello everyone, this is Angela and welcome to my channel, Angie the ENTJ. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notifications bell so that you'll know whenever I upload any new content. In the previous video, part 3 of Untampered Adulthood, titled All Hail the King, where I dived into masculinity, I pointed out that the majority of you viewing this video are people who only speak the English language. And for those of you who may be multilingual, chances are high that you are speaking languages that use some variation of the Roman alphabet, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. Okay. The issue is that the Roman alphabet, especially for English speakers, has only 26 letters. And if I attempted to create words from it using only hypothetically 2 letters each, that would be 26 squared, or 26 times 26, the number of letters times itself again. And if I take 26 times 26, it would yield only 676 possibilities for me to derive words that begin with 2 letters from the English language. Whereas in other languages, especially logographic or pictorial languages like Chinese, Medu-Neter, or ancient Egyptian, Medu-Neter is its actual name, ancient Mayan, and so forth, there will be thousands upon thousands of possibilities. So for instance, there are 700 core Medu-Neter or ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic characters written across several different scripts. So it makes it to be more than 2,000 characters altogether on any given day. And it's estimated to be up to 10,000 overall. Don't quote me on that though, but I've seen those kinds of numbers. However, just creating a word using only 2 characters from the core 700 or so characters, I can take 700 squared, or 700 times 700, and it will give me 490,000 possibilities. That's nearly 500,000 possibilities. So when you take into consideration that English will only yield 676 possibilities, not even close to 1,000, versus Medu-Neter that gives nearly 500,000 possibilities, it is safe to say that if you only speak English, you are in a transparent box that you did not even know existed until recently. You are not only limited by the words of the language, but you are also limited by the concepts created by the words in English. You see, there are concepts and words that exist in other languages that have no English equivalent. This is the reason why I've been using concepts from ancient Egypt as depicted using the Medu-Neter language, the language of ancient Egypt, on this topic. And this is a good time to segue into my disclaimers about it. Listen, I am never attempting to get you to do what I do or believe what I believe. You do not have to learn hieroglyphs, and this channel does not proselytize over here. What we're going to be doing is comparing concepts by approaching the matter in a theoretically scientific manner, and not, and I emphasize the word not, in a competitive manner or a competitive sense. What I'm here to do is to open the box that many of you do not know that you're even existing within. My goal is not to empty you out of the box. Whether you choose to stay in the box or to leave it, that will be your decision. I just feel like you should at least know that many of you are in a box. So please, I'm not here giving a sermon, and there is no competition. What I am offering is an alternative perspective by examining ancient symbols in a quest to understand abstract concepts about us women, especially since our very existence has been questioned in recent times, not only within the United States, but also in the UK, two English-speaking countries. And I'm sure Canada is in there somewhere too.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So
What is a woman?
Do you struggle between telling the difference between a man and a woman?
Can a woman have a penis?
The world's most controversial question.
It's pretty obvious. It's pretty basic stuff, isn't it?
What is a woman?
I notice that the powers that be are no longer asking in 2024, what is a woman, in the middle of this West 4B movement and in the middle of the global birth rate decline. I bet you they know what a woman is now. So let me go back to what I was saying. Listen, on this channel, we respect whatever your individual religious and spiritual beliefs are, or your non-beliefs may be. Our goal is to be fair and dive into this mature conversation and face the truth, even if it is inconvenient, but doing so respectfully. You see, a lot of people in the US, especially, but it's safe to say that it is global, have a Virgin Mary perspective of womanhood. In all fairness, humans and women existed on the planet long before the Virgin Mary was born, long before the birth of Jesus and or his crucifixion, which is why I figure that the people who built these things by chiseling and stacking limestone rock with a bit of granite, for those of you who are just listening in, I'm talking about the pyramids, y'all. The same people who have a history that documented more than a dozen women who ruled as Nasut Biti or as pharaohs. You know, I covered Nasut Biti versus king versus pharaoh in the previous manhood video part 3. Okay. I figured that it would be interesting to explore what people in this advanced ancient society thought about women around the time when they were constructing the pyramids or even prior. So in today's video, we will explore religious and spiritual symbols and concepts, respectfully comparing the expectations according to the doctrines or the teachings of the Madonna or the Virgin Mary, and we will compare it to Osset or by her Greek name, Isis. The reason why I'm doing this is because the majority of the people in the US in particular come from a Christian background. And even if they no longer practice it, they are still operating from its principles in one way, shape, form, or fashion without even realizing it, because this is how the majority of us were molded within our childhood. So a lot of Americans are not religious, but in trying times, that's when they will start showing their Christian belief. Also, when it's time for marriage, they'll get married at a church, or they will do Christian customs even if they don't get married at a church. And especially in the time of funerals, they still do it in a Christian way. So even if the average US citizen is not religious, they still operate from Christian principles in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Okay. And listen, this is natural. It's natural to do that because this may be all that you know. Plus everyone else around you is doing the same exact thing. So if you're not noticing it, there's nothing that's triggering you because it's just normal to you. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong or bad with it. I'm just saying that if that is all you know, then that is all you can do. What I'm offering here is an opportunity for you to think outside of your boxes, and that's only if you choose to do so. I think that it is fair for you to at least know that there are concepts that do not exist in English, if English is your only language. And I think that it's fair for you to know how a society that was advanced on all metrics the very society that had concepts that today's modern and technologically advanced societies borrowed from them. How did they, the ancients, view womanhood long before the influence of patriarchy and long before the influence of the Abrahamic religions? And I say this respectfully. So let's dive into it. What we are seeing right now is a picture of Osset. Her Greek name is Isis. But for the duration of this video, we'll be referring to her by her ancient Egyptian name, her Meduneter name, her Kemetic name as Osset. And as you can see, she has this rectangular, this geometric symbol on her head. What that is a symbol of a throne, and it is as her crown. She's holding the power of life in one hand. That's her right hand, as symbolized by the ankh, or the cross with the oval on top of it. And in her left hand, she holds the symbol of chaos. What it shows is that the power of the throne is within her, meaning that she decides who can sit upon it. The ankh shows that Osset has the ability to save lives. As a matter of fact, in ancient times, nurses were associated with Osset. And so the other scepter in her left hand shows that she can control chaos. The story of Osir or Osiris and Osset or Isis is a very long and complex story. And in this picture, she is wearing a different headdress that looks like cow's horns with a sun in between it. And what that symbolizes is that she leads the masses. Going back to the story of Osir and Osset, I will condense it here as much as I possibly can because I want the focus for the time being to be on womanhood and not to dive into other complex and multi-layered topics. So this video is going to be a little bit lengthy, but I'm still trying to keep it brief, y'all. So going back to the story of Osir and Osset, basically Osir or Osiris and Osset, basically Isis, they are the children of the deities Nut and Geb, with Osir being the firstborn or the eldest son. Osir and Osset also have two other siblings, Set and Nebhet, or her Greek name, Nephthys. Nut, their mother, is a personification of the sky at night, containing all of the stars, the planets, the different galaxies, and their suns and their moons. She is the personification of the heavens. Geb, their father, is the personification of earth, and particularly the land. He is associated with geese, considering that when you look at the nature of geese, even though they can fly, they prefer to walk and be attached to the earth. Nebhet, the sister to Osir, Osset, and Set, is the personification of patience, the type of patience shown to people who are in grief, who are healing from trauma. She personifies altruism. She's also associated with funerary rites, and she's also associated with the patience that is shown with women who are going through childbirth. So Nebhet would be the personification of the person that is encouraging the woman, that is there with her during her trials and tribulations until the birth of the child. She's also associated with the brewing of beer. Nebhet is also the wife of Set. And Set is the personification of chaos, of rage, the type of criminal malice rage that leads to unaliving. He's also a very jealous, destructive, sabotaging energy. And Set's energy is also associated with destroying other evil entities. So going back to Osset or Isis, Osset was already a holy figure when she was born to her parents, who were also two holy figures. This is important because what it shows is that Aset did not have to perform any task first, and she did not have to be chosen in order to be considered a sacred being. The same can be said of Aser, who everyone loved, because Aser symbolized unification with all. And he unified the people who lived wildly, who were constantly fighting against each other. And he did that through the use of agriculture, through the use of written words, and through the development of theology, among other things. Aser and Aset were married, and the marriage was unconsummated, meaning they hadn't done the bedroom tango yet. They hadn't done it yet. And they ruled Egypt together. That is until Set, the personification of chaos, and also Aser's younger brother, grew jealous of him and plotted to have Aser unalived. So, very, very, very long story short, Set and his companions, he had help, worked together and unalived Aser. Set threw his body in a coffin into the bottom of the Nile River. Aset, with the help of Nebhet, Aset is Aser's wife, and Nebhet would be their sister-in-law. They worked together to find Aser. Aset resurrected Aser and brought him back to life. When Set heard that Aser was resurrected, he grew angry. He found him again and unalived him again, but this time, in unaliving him, he cut him into 14 different pieces. Aset, with Nebhet helping her again, found 13 of Aser's body parts and bandaged him back together, creating the first mummy. However, the missing 14th piece was Aser's manhood, which had been eaten up by a fish. The marriage between Aser and Aset, as I mentioned earlier, had not been consummated. And that meant that Aset was a virgin and Aser did not have an heir. So Aset remedied the situation. She fashioned a tekken, what many of you may know by the Greek name as an obelisk. She used this tekken, or this obelisk, as a manhood prosthetic for giving Aser a peen, where he could have a mechanism to release his baby batter. So this may be the first documented story of a prosthesis and in vitro fertilization. Aset transformed herself into a bird and was able to extract his baby batter and become pregnant with their son Heru, who has the head of a falcon and is often depicted as a falcon wearing the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. While this was going on, in the meantime, Set, the personification of chaos, took control of Egypt and plunged the nation, of course, into chaos. Because he was so chaotic, he had no creative capacity, and the only energy he could offer is the chaos that he is. So crops were not growing. People were starving and were being unalived due to preventable illnesses and conditions. The standard of living went down. People were not as educated as they should have been because there were no systems in place. There were droughts and famine and fighting as a result of Set's illegitimate rule. Meanwhile, Aset had given birth as a virgin to Heru, raised him out of view of his evil and jealous uncle Set. When Heru came of age, he came back to avenge his father's unalivement by Set and, of course, to take back the throne. The battle between Heru, or Horus, and his uncle Set went on until finally Heru outsmarted Set, won against him, and restored Aser on the throne. The story of Aser, Aset, and Heru is considered to be the first documented Holy Trinity, or the Holy Family, consisting of a Holy Father, a Holy Son, and a Holy Mother. And you see that the hands of Aset on the right-hand side and Heru on the left are giving power to Aser in the middle. This is basically saying that in order to lead, the feminine energy is needed to put you on the throne. And the young masculine who is birthed through the feminine is needed to challenge those who will challenge you. I had to briefly dive into the details of the story of the ancient Egyptian version of the Holy Trinity that predates Christianity, by the way, in order to help you to understand or help you to see how Aset was viewed. Aset in ancient times was considered the ideal of womanhood. She was already a holy figure when she was born. She did not have to perform a task in order to be considered holy. She was already born with her powers, and those powers consisted of the power of the throne. In other words, she alone is who empowers the one who sits on the throne. She had her own magic associated with her. That is the power of resurrection, as she resurrected Sarah. She also had the power of creating life through irregular means, which essentially means that she was the first to do a form of in vitro fertilization in history. She is also associated with the prolonging of life. Aset had all of these powers and more before she married Aser and before she became a mother to Haru. And that's important to understand that. So moving along, see, in many cultures, the king is the one who has the ultimate power in the society, and his wife, his queen, it doesn't matter if she hails from a royal lineage or if she was a commoner. So long as the king marries her, she automatically is granted powers and privileges by his throne and by his decree. And in the instances where the king may divorce the queen, then she loses those powers. The only way that she can maintain access to those powers of the throne in such a setup is by giving birth to a male heir, preferably the firstborn son. In the Medo-Neter language, there is not a word for queen the way that it is in other languages. And when you go through other languages, you have a specific word that means queen. However, in Medo-Neter, the word used to describe what one would presume to be a queen actually translates to mean the wife of the king, or specifically the woman of the king. Also, in part 3 of these series, I went into why the ancient Egyptian leader is often referred to as a pharaoh, but he was not considered a king, but a Nesubiti. So feel free to watch that video and get the breakdown of the difference between a king, a pharaoh, and a Nesubiti. Okay, so going back to Aset, you see, Egyptologists assumed that since there was no word specifically meaning queen, that it was because the woman had to have had a lower status in relationship to the king. However, Aset is the one who possesses the power of the throne. Her energy, or the lack of it, can make the difference between whether or not the king can remain seated. I'm using king out of convenience. You all would know that who I'm speaking of as the king is actually called an Nesubiti. So, but I'll use king out of convenience. Okay. So in other words, the reason why a king or Nesubiti of ancient Egypt can sit upon a throne is because there is a woman empowering him. So how in the world can a king grant power to someone who he needs to empower him? This is the reason why there is not a word in Medo-Neter, like it is in other languages, specifically meaning queen, the way that it exists in other languages. Okay? Plainly, how in the world are you going to grant me power and privileges when I am the one who allowed you to sit on the throne in the first place? It is your power that comes from me and not the other way around. This is the reason why there is no word for queen in Medo-Neter, and she is instead known to be the woman of the king or the wife of the king, and not as a queen. she is the one who grants the power of the throne to him and not the other way around. You see, the ancients viewed women as being elemental, like the atom. You can't break an atom down any further. That is the smallest of the elements. So we women cannot be broken down into anything less than ourselves. We are like the elements, like gold and platinum and rhodium and so forth. Oxygen. You can't break an atom of oxygen down any further. We are the same way. And we can see how this is even true today. We can observe how patriarchy is on its last leg because the global birth rates are declining. And exactly who are the only people who have the capability of turning this around? Who are the only people that can resurrect the society? It is us women. Take a look at where the people in the world who are migrating, where are they migrating to? Where are they migrating away from versus where are they migrating to? They are migrating into places where the women are empowered, because societies with empowered women operate better than societies where the women are oppressed. And this is also part of the reason why Aset is associated with water. A civilization needs water in order to survive. No water, no civilization. Women are as essential to a nation as water is to a civilization. Aset was considered to be the ideal model of womanhood in ancient Egypt. Because listen, they knew back then, so goes the woman, so goes the nation. This is how the people who built pyramids from limestone and granite blocks that can weigh anywhere from 2.5 tons to 15 tons or 5,000 pounds to 30,000 pounds each. This is how these people who carved temples out of the mountains, who had advanced knowledge in many topics from mathematics to engineering and architecture, from the life and health sciences and so forth. This is how they felt about women. The ancient Kemetu, the name of the ancient Egyptians is Kemetu, also associated the star Sirius with Aset. And that's Sirius, Sirius, Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, and its appearance, particularly in the month of June, signified that the Nile River would begin to flood and would inundate the banks of the Nile with its water and with its rich black silt where people could plant their crops. And speaking of stars, Aset's mother, Nut, was depicted as the universe itself, with all of the stars representing her children. The so-called Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau is aligned to the star of Sirius, and the ancient Egyptian calendar was centered around the star of Sirius as well, all of which is associated with Aset, the model of ideal womanhood. The main colors shown by the Sirius star when it's giving off its energy are blue and white, which are colors that are also associated with Aset. On a side note, the Dogon people are another group from ancient times who knew about Sirius A and Sirius B, the dwarf star orbiting Sirius A, before modern technology was able to detect it, but I digress. So, in ancient times, the importance of the woman was equated to being essential for civilization to exist, from the power that she gives to the one who sits upon the throne, from her correlation to the Sirius star, which causes the Nile River to flood and bring its silt upon the banks so that people can survive, they can plant their crops, they can eat. Aset is also associated with the moon, whose gravitational field impacts the ocean waves as well as the water rising into plants. Those who may farm or be used to, growing tomatoes and things like that, you may be familiar with the difference between harvesting crops on days of a waxing moon or when the moon is growing to fullness. The vegetables tend to be a bit more plump and juicier than on the days of a waning moon, if you decide to, pick your vegetables then, or your fruit, or when the moon is no longer full. So, moving along to the Virgin Mary, which I feel the need to say this again. I know that I'm covering some sensitive topics. I know that what I'm about to dive into may disrupt some of your comfort zones, and I want you to know that I am not here to make you feel bad. I'm not doing this video to disrupt your comfort zone. I'm not doing this video to change your belief. I'm not doing this video to proselytize to you. I genuinely respect everyone's autonomy and what each individual chooses to believe. This channel does not attempt to change people's religious or spiritual beliefs, or if you don't have any, try to convince you to go the way that I am going. That is not what this content is about. What we are doing here is taking a fair but respectful and mature observation at what we have been influenced by for generations, and sometimes by force. If you are not at a place where you can hear such things, then now is a good time for you to tune out. For those of you who remain, I thank you. And now let's move forward. So going back to the Virgin Mary, who is also someone that has been presented to many girls and women as an ideal model of womanhood, and especially motherhood. When we observe her story, we see that the Virgin Mary was someone who had to passively accept whatever fate was bestowed upon her. According to doctrine, she did not choose herself, but instead was chosen by a masculine entity to become pregnant with Jesus, the Son of God. She was basically told by a masculine messenger, the angel Gabriel, that she was pregnant by the Holy Ghost or Holy Spirit with God's Son. She did not have a choice or a voice in the matter. She just had to accept it. In addition to it, she had to eventually experience the worst grief that anyone can endure on this planet, which was for her to witness her child losing his life violently at the hands of brutish men while she herself is still living. The Virgin Mary had no ability to resurrect Jesus the way that Osset had the ability to resurrect Osir. Instead, the Virgin Mary that is, simply had to endure the unalivement of Jesus after first enduring the secondary trauma of his torture. Fortunately for her, Jesus was resurrected and she was able to witness him coming back to life. However, unlike Osset, the Virgin Mary had no ability to affect the outcome of her life or that of Jesus, for that matter, beyond being his mother in a society that was a staunch patriarchy. She had no ability to agree or disagree or negotiate the terms of her situation. She just had to accept it without a choice. She had to accept the decisions that were made for her and not by her. She just had to endure it. Sure, she has the title of being the mother of Jesus, but she could not negotiate whether or not she could gain any magical powers or secure any rights for herself or others while she was alive on the earth. And even in the spiritual realm, she couldn't even negotiate, hey, I know, it's Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, but can I at least be a part of the Trinity? She couldn't even do that. Even though her body was used to incubate, birth, and then nurse Jesus, she's not considered as part of the Holy Trinity, according to the doctrine. She just had to accept what was granted on terms by the grantor, and it came only after she made huge sacrifices first to the benefit of all other parties, that in the end, she gets the title of Holy Mother and is associated with random miracles every now and again that we see in the news.
Porque se ven estáticas las notas. Sí, sí es. Sí son sus lágrimas.
She does not have a building on the planet that points to her constellation in the sky. And her constellation became hers. You know, it was borrowed from the so-called pagan Romans pointing at Virgo or the Virgin. Even if no one believes in the story of Aset, and again, that's not what this channel is about, you don't have to believe. So even if they don't believe in the story of Aset, they can see why the ancient Egyptians personified her influence as the moon and as the star of Sirius. They can understand why the colors blue and white are associated with Aset. They can see how the Sirius star causes the Nile River to flood and bring up fresh soil that can be used to cultivate crops. However, when we look at the Virgin Mary, beyond being the mother to Jesus, which I respect with significance, however, we do not see her powers on a consistent basis. She is now associated with the constellation of Virgo, which is Latin for virgin, but that happened during the Middle Ages in Europe on the basis of her virginity and the Immaculate Conception. It wasn't like she was born or created and this was automatically assigned to her. No, it became an oh, by the way. And this is why I said earlier on that a lot of women, even those who are not following Christianity or no longer following Christianity in particular, we are collectively, even with the best of intentions, we are still modeling the passivity in the life of the Virgin Mary. And I'm saying that respectfully speaking. Many women operate on the narrative of simply enduring whatever comes our way, whatever's thrown on us, dumped on us, without tapping into our true power, because this is what is expected of women to do. That in order for us to have any influence in our lives, as well as any influence within the society that diminishes our rights, that first we have to endure immense sacrifices and then passively await for a male entity to validate our sacrifice so that we are then granted with an indirect power of influence, even if it means passively watching our own child being oppressed and brutalized, which in nature the feminine in the animal kingdom will fight to the point of unalivement while protecting her offspring.
I got 21 bullets inside of this clip and I'm ready to unload this bitch.
However, the feminine in humanity right now, us women, we were influenced either through institutional oppression via laws or just plain and outright torture to subdue the same protective instinct that exists within us as well by modeling our mothers and our grandmothers and people like the Virgin Mary, respectfully, who had to endure residing in a patriarchal society that oppressed their rights. That if we simply endure and we sacrifice enough, then one day we will be crowned as a queen by the king who has the power and the final say and can change his mind at the drop of a dime. However, the ancient story of Aset tells us differently. Aset was born with her own power. She was already born being a holy figure, a magical figure, and she did not have to sacrifice or be paired up with a male entity in order to be powerful, and her power and her influence was very active. It wasn't a passive influence. She could direct things. She will never be a queen, not Aset. And the reason why Aset will never be a queen is because the power of the throne is already within her. And it is her. It is Aset. It is the woman who grants it to whomever she chooses. When Aset was faced with a blatant offense to her family that threatened her lineage, that threatened her way of life, she played a dynamic role in restoring it. She didn't sit back and pray. She did something about it. Aset had all of her attributes and was already valuable and powerful and influential before she chose to get married and before she chose to become a mother. And she used those powers to nurture a civilization according to her terms. She didn't just pray and cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to pray. It's okay to grieve. But Osset did something about her situation too. And even to this day, look around and see who the majority of homeless people are within the streets. What percentage of men and women do you see? If you're being honest, you're going to say you mostly see men. And the numbers support it too. It's because within those men, what's going on in their lives, there are no women placing them on thrones. And when left alone to themselves, many men, unfortunately, lack the capacity to rise up and seat themselves on a throne and be able to direct their lives. And this is especially true if they are poor and uneducated. Without us women, the life expectancy of men decreases. Their health declines. They even become more susceptible to developing Alzheimer's and cancer. And on top of it, they are less wealthy. This has been proven time and time and time again, that women are the determining factor in men's overall health and longevity. This, among many reasons, is why the ancients revered Osset as the ideal of womanhood, and they valued her immensely. I feel the need to repeat my disclaimer that is already in the majority of the videos on this channel, that what is being discussed here in this video or any other videos of mine is not an attempt on my part to proselytize. That is not what this channel does. You are free to believe what you want to. I'm not here to bring you to my side of things in terms of beliefs. What I offer is a different perspective so that you can at least know that you are in a box. Majority of you are. Some of you do not even realize that you're in a boxed mindset. You're not even aware there was a time in the world where the value of women was seen as integral to a civilization, seen as integral to the civilization as water is to a society. In other words, if you have no water, you have no civilization, meaning our value goes beyond our reproductive capacity. Our value is not only earthly, it is also associated with the brightest star in the night sky that flares primarily in the colors of blue and white. And we are also associated with the moon. There was a time in the world where women's advice was taken seriously and not laughed at, diminished, argued with, gaslit, and so forth. And during those times, the society became wealthy. So here we are in 2024. And ladies, why are we collectively still behaving in a passive, feminine manner? Well, first, the majority of you watching or listening to this video, like I said, are English speakers. Some of you may be multilingual, but you will be multilingual in a language that utilizes some version of the Roman alphabet. However, most of you are not multilingual, and that is especially true if you're from the US. Even if you are highly literate and have multiple degrees, if you only know how to communicate and think in English, then you are limited to the iterations of a language that is just a little over 1,600 years old and that uses an alphabet that only has 26 characters. In part 3 of the series, I revealed that in an effort to create words with 2 letters, there are only 676 possibilities in English, whereas in Metaneter or the hieroglyphs, there are nearly 500,000 possibilities. There are words in Metaneter in particular, as well as in many other languages in general, that do not have an equivalent in English for that word in that language. And many of you are coming from a Christian background, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that as a matter of fact. And if you are not Christians or if you're agnostic, many of you only know the English version of the Bible, which has been transliterated from different languages such as Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. You see, the Virgin Mary and Jesus would have spoken in Aramaic during those days. And sadly, even the average, genuinely devout evangelical Christian who can recite the Lord's Prayer from memory sincerely, they are incapable of either reciting or understanding someone else reciting it in Aramaic. And dare I say, they also do not collectively have a consistent answer as to why the Virgin Mary is depicted quite often wearing the colors blue and white. I think that it's sad and inhumane that an institution would allow people to spend years of devotion of their lives being functionally illiterate within the context of their own faith. By that I mean, if the average Christian was presented with a Bible that contained the original and untranslated text, they would not be able to read it. The Jews learn Hebrew and can recite the Torah. The Muslims learn Arabic and can recite the Quran. However, Christians, by contrast, and primarily, only know their mother tongue and possibly one other language. Most cannot read Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, or recite the Bible in its original tongue, including the Lord's Prayer. So why has this happened? Why have girls and women been systematically kept illiterate and uneducated, even about their spirituality, until about the past 100 years or so, especially in the U.S., and especially when we are the ones who have the most face-to-face time with children, boys and girls alike, during their formative years? Well, you see, it does a few things. The first thing that it does is to keep the system of patriarchy intact. Patriarchy centers an imbalanced masculine energy, a chaotic energy. And anytime there is an imbalance, there is a dysfunction. An imbalanced masculine energy is destructive. Whenever something is destructive, it has no ability to regenerate and renew, and it consumes a lot of resources, kind of like what happened in the earlier part of this video when I went into the story of Osir and Aset, focusing on Set, the jealous younger brother. When he began to rule Egypt after he unalived Osir, he did not have the power of Aset behind him, and everything he attempted to do failed.
You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, you're a woman, you're nothing at all.
Till you do right by me, everything you even think about gonna fail.
Additionally, when something is destructive, it does not create. It just simply destroys. It robs. In a similar sense, patriarchy appears to build to those who are in the closest proximity to the perpetrators. However, when you observe how it generally operates, it robs resources. It robs or exploits labor. It co-opts or hijacks from others. It destroys resources that literally took trillions of years to generate, quicker than you can snap your finger or blink your eye. And like a parasite, it consumes the resources of its host, be it economically, be it in a marriage via unpaid labor. It consumes the resources of its host until there is nothing left. Even if it means that they too will perish in the process along with the host that they are exploiting, they will continue to consume. So it's 2024, about to be 2025 soon, and now we're here. And patriarchy has overconsumed the quote-unquote supply of women and girls. There are over 8 billion people on the planet, with more than 4 billion being men and boys, and less than 4 billion being women and girls. And the difference between those two numbers are about 70 million, meaning that there are 70 million more boys and men on the planet than there are girls and women. And rather than the patriarchy say to themselves, hey, oops, we need to stop with our destructive ways, what they do instead is ramp up their efforts, like the Taliban in Afghanistan. They increase the consumption of the resources, whether or not it's a natural resource or the demand and expectations placed on women and girls. Listen, kidnapping has gone up. sex trafficking has increased. Child marriage is on the rise. Oppressive laws have been reinstated, like the overturning of Roe versus Wade. So now we have an increase in the number of girls who are victims of sexual assault that leads to pregnancy and also leads to them having to be forced to give birth. The only way to truly change the situation around for everyone, for every single individual, it begins with women and girls. We need to understand our true collective value. First, we have to center ourselves in our own lives and make our own fate, even if others disagree. We have to be the ones to direct that. Otherwise, we will sit passively by while we individually are being crucified along with our loved ones and especially our children. So far, things are going well with the birth rate decline, which is a crisis for the patriarchy, but not for us women.
No peace, no pussy, no peace, no pussy. Lock it up. 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 Lock it up.
You see, what the patriarchy did was to commandeer our instinct for natural selection, which enabled men who had undesirable traits and normally would have been rejected. It gave them an ability to reproduce. In other words, what I'm saying is that if patriarchy never interfered with women, then the majority of men walking around would be 6 feet tall with a six-pack and making six figures or more. But because patriarchy interfered with it, we got other guys. Now, if you don't have those attributes and you're a guy listening in, I'm not coming for you. I'm not coming for you. I'm just using a simple way to point out what happens when patriarchy interferes with women's natural instincts. And what it causes to happen is that guys that have, for instance, violent temperaments, it gives them an ability to reproduce. Whereas if women were not interfered with, we would have automatically and naturally rejected the violent people. Okay. So the patriarchy, through illiteracy and backwardness, commandeered our natural selection ability. In the story of Aset, she would have preferred to resurrect her husband from being unalived and strap onto him a prosthetic manhood, than to become the wife of Set or practice polygamy, or give birth using her womb to the offspring of a violent criminal, or bear a child with someone who was immortal. Because in the story of Aset, these are all deities, but there were people that lived upon the earth at the time. So she, Aset, did not change her standards due to the change in her circumstances. Because, see, at the time of the story, there were only 2 female deities and 2 male deities that could marry one another. And then there were the mortals. So Aset was left with the decision to either resurrect Aser and be impregnated by him and have his baby, or to be with a Set, or to be with a man who is immortal. So Aset kept her standards high, and she did not yield to the tyranny of Set, or the tyranny of chaos, or the tyranny of the personification of chaos. Again, this video is not about your beliefs. As I said much earlier, I'm here to open the box, not to empty it. Whether you believe in the Virgin Mary or in Aset or neither, none of that is relevant right now. What you need to do is believe in yourself as women and girls. If you're listening, listen, you're going to be future women. Okay. You need to view yourselves through an unlimited perspective, because that is the key for you to fully develop your capacity as a woman. Believe in yourself and know that there was a time thousands of years ago that an advanced civilization whose advanced techniques can be witnessed on the earth still to this day. Those people equated the importance of women to water, to a civilization, equated the importance of women to the moon and to the brightest star shining in the night sky, flaring in the colors of blue and white, the star of Sirius. That they viewed us, women, as being so powerful that we determined who could sit on the throne. And in 2024, we've already shown the world and ourselves how it appears when we unplug ourselves from the patriarchal nonsense and how we are essential in determining whether or not a civilization can even exist. There is much more outside of the boxes that patriarchy have collectively placed us within. And we possess the elements within us. We are the key to removing those invisible containers. That's all I have to say for now. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and click on the notification bell so you'll know whenever I upload any new content. And make sure you share the video. Take care until next time.
As I walk in my path, the joy